SABC News presentation.
Good evening to you. A warm welcome to Interface. My name is Mashele. The ANC succession debate has begun to heat up, and already a number of names have been thrown in the hat. Speaker Baleka Mbete is the latest to reportedly put her hand up, and other so-called frontrunners are Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Tonight on Interface, we take stock of how this race is unfolding with our political analysts, Prince Mashele and also Lebogang Pheko. But before we start talking to them, let's have a look at this insert.
In 2014, and according to former ANC Women's League President Angie Motshekga, the issue of a woman president did not arise. But under a new ANC women's leadership, the issue was debated in top ANC structures. Electing an ANC woman president was fast gaining momentum.
A woman president is not going to be the president of women in the ANC. It's going to be a member of the ANC that has grown organically within the structures of the ANC, that has always been part of the struggle for women's emancipation, but also a member that is gender sensitive and a member that understands the challenges that are facing South Africa.
Already, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that he would be available to run for the presidency of the ANC. The ANC alliance partners, COSATU and the SABC, had endorsed him to take over from President Jacob Zuma as leader of the party and country. On the eve of the ANC's January 8 statement, the ANC Women's League announced its ANC top 6 preferred candidates. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was also endorsed as the future president by the ANC's Youth League and the Mkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans, or the MKVA. The ANC Youth League later changed its mind for a surprise candidate.
The whole country was shaken and I was very excited to see men running up and down because of that decision.
In the recent interview on SABC radio stations with President Zuma, analysts say he came out to support Dlamini-Zuma. He also agreed with the ANC Women's League that it was not ANC tradition for a deputy to become president. This comes after ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe said the party should have succession in mind.
The ANC has to search itself and see some of the procedures and processes that if you look carefully into, they do suppress women. Because why people come up with that, it's because they know it's going to suppress women.
Another issue that the party has tried to put a lid on unsuccessfully is when to have the succession debate. Ahead of the party's 2017 elective conference in December, some say a succession debate now could further sow divisions in the party. And while the succession debate rages on within the party and South Africa, how will the next ANC president unite the party and the country? If successful, will the ANC Youth League's preferred candidate live up to its promise of a second revolution? Rosalia Whitehead, Interface, Johannesburg.
So, of course, even though we are recorded, we do welcome your thoughts. We always look forward to hearing from you. Find us on Facebook at Interface on SABC, or tweet us at Interface on SABC or at Mashele and give us your thoughts. Let's welcome our guests tonight, Prince Mashele, political analyst, and also Lebogang Pheko, who is a senior research fellow at Trade Collective. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us. Much. So this succession story, is it unfolding any differently, Lebogang, from what we've seen before in the past? Or are we just excited because it is 2017 and maybe the mood in the country has shifted somewhat?
There has been an organic shift in the mood in the country. There are always contestations when it comes to succession because it's not only a succession of power, it's a succession of interests, it's a succession of proximity to particular interests as well. And I think that at this moment, the last 12 months, the South African public and the political domain have changed irrevocably. They have changed in ways that I don't think that we'll be able to assess right away, but the cleavages which were not apparent before. And in that volatile atmosphere, right now, the stakes seem a lot higher than they were previously. I mean, before it was just a case of, okay, from Mandela to Mbeki, no fuss. And then from Mbeki to Zuma, I think post the Polokwane consensus or lack thereof, we began to see a shift, which was then consolidated in Mangaung. And now we are seeing a very fractious and extremely, a lot of cleavages and a lot of friction and inherent tensions within our politics, within the ANC, within Parliament, which all lead to a very volatile succession debate.
Do you see the same shift?
Look, I don't think something has shifted fundamentally in the recent past. So if you look, I think the shift took place in Polokwane. From Polokwane, this side, the ANC has become much more chaotic. In other words, succession debates are no longer handled with decency and decorum. The atmosphere is chaotic. So from Polokwane to where we are now, nothing has shifted. But from Polokwane backwards, something has shifted. But there's another thing. Yeah. You will recall that going to Polokwane, the Women's League and the rest of those who supported at the time Deputy President Jacob Zuma to become president of the ANC, their argument was that a deputy president must become a president. It is interesting that part of perhaps the shift that Lebogang is talking about is that they have now changed their mind. They are no longer running on that principle that a deputy president becomes a president. So something has changed there.
But Lebogang, the president would say it's never been ANC tradition, it's never been ANC culture for the deputy to ascend. Well, we heard him say that, it's anybody's race.
It's by convention it has been. The reality is that by convention it has been. And I think the principle is whether that should be, whether that should be the case inevitably is one that's worthy of some debate. However, again, the climate and the context in which that remark is made requires us to analyze it with, and scrutinize it even more closely.
And before we get to, some of the leading candidates in this race, from what we keep hearing, the fact that the mother body once again has said, don't start talking succession just yet. But COSATU comes out and says, we back the deputy. The ANC Women's League comes out and says, this is our candidate, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. And, even though the mother body says, this is wrong, don't do this, you hear the SG saying something, you hear the president saying something that is read in a certain way. Is that part of the chaos you were talking about earlier, or is that really how these debates usually unfold?
Out of chaos comes chaos. Out of order comes order. The ANC that we're dealing with post-Polokwane is a very chaotic animal. This thing you call mother body, you can't locate it because you don't know who constitutes it. What we see are factions. Gwede's part of a faction, Zuma is part of a faction, everybody is part of a faction. So when Gwede speaks, he is not looked at as a Secretary General of the party. He's looked at as a leader of a faction, which is why he's not listened to. So there is no one who has authority to marshal the forces because the organization is chaotic.
We have to take a short break, but do you agree very quickly with that?
Yes and no. I think that the factions are one facet of this, but the problem is also that there isn't the moral center and the gravitas to hold those factions together.
Is this succession debate happening in chaos, as one of our analysts has said? Give us your thoughts at Interface on SABC or at Mashele. We'll take a quick break. We're back after this. Welcome back, and tonight on Interface we're talking about who should likely become the president of the ANC and what's happening with this race as we lead up to 2019. And We're talking in studio with Prince Mashele, who's a political analyst, and also Lebogang, Pheko, Senior Research Fellow at Trade Collective. And before the break, we're just looking at the state of this discussion. But now let's get into some of the names that have been put in the hat. We've got Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, and we've got Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Let's start with her. The thinking or the argument that if you elect her, then you actually have President Jacob Zuma having a third and a fourth term, essentially. Is that fair, Lebogang?
Look, it is what it is. When you have the same surname as the incumbent, it is what it is. I think there are sensitivities around that sort of thing, and we are not India. We don't do the Gandhis. We're not Pakistan, you know, the Bhuttos, etc. We haven't per se been even the US and the Bushes and the Clintons. We haven't per se been accustomed to political families in the same way. So there's a sensitivity around that, which I think is problematic and that we should be mindful of. Secondly, I don't think that those remarks they're both fair and unfair. The one thing that we need to look at is, number one, you know, fitness for the job, fitness for office, the capacity, and whether whether she is the correct match to meet the grueling challenges of the South African political and economic landscape as any other candidate. But secondly, we cannot be blind to the fact that a lot of people are very concerned that this seems to be a self-elongation exercise on behalf of the Zuma clan and the Zuma dynasty. And the sensitivities of the public cannot be ignored in this regard.
Is she a victim of her surname, though?
Let me give you an example, a dramatic example. President Jacob Zuma has more than 700 charges hanging on his head, right? She becomes president. I think she would never allow him to go to jail, because if she were to allow him to go to jail, she would have to accompany her children to go see their father in prison. This is practical. It's practical. Or she will have to explain to the kids, why has he allowed their father to go to jail? It would bring shame to the family if that were to happen. That's number one.
Prince, before we get to number two, why should we assume that she would not be practical about this and say, your father has committed a crime, your father is now going to jail, and therefore this is what must happen because I'm principled and I am the president, this I support? Why do we assume she wouldn't be brave enough to do that? Well,
maybe she would do that, but the children would walk around as shameful children whose father is in prison. You can't change that.
No, but I think, but surely...
Okay, we're going to get to your number two, but you're raising something very important.
Sorry, because surely that is not the role of the presidency. It wouldn't even be her call, Tembisa and Prince. It wouldn't be her call. And I think, okay, the ashamed children is one. I think it's an overwrought example. I hear it. But I also think that it also takes us to the question of, you know, the balance of forces, the separation of powers, and the really crude meddling that the executive has exercised over legal processes, indeed.
It's true. It's true. I mean, if you look at what Jacob Zuma has done, he has destroyed the criminal justice system in South Africa. Why? Because he wanted to protect himself. So this notion that a president doesn't intervene, when the president hires the head of the prosecuting authority, hires the commissioner of the police, it's fallacy. I wanted to come to number two.
Number two.
Which is substance. Let's assess Nkosazana, as a person, as a leader, right? I'm very dismissive, by the way, of her. I'll tell you why.
Yeah, you said she doesn't bring anything unique.
One, she's tired. I mean, this is a 67-year-old who hasn't done... No, it is my argument.
Okay.
No, listen to my argument. I'm building it.
Let's hear it.
She is tired. I haven't had any innovative idea coming from her any time. You can go dig her speeches. Sitting here, you can't tell me what is an idea that she ever propagated, she placed on the table that we debated as a nation, as to where is South Africa, the character of the nation, where the future of South Africa should be. I've had many people telling me all sorts of positions, AU and this. I'm not talking about that because she's not the only one to occupy positions, because how are you going to differentiate her from Baleka, for example, who has also occupied positions? We must differentiate her on the basis of her own individual intellectual strength, and I'm saying there's none.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Age aside, you know, because we could now get into a discussion about how old is Cyril Ramaphosa, how old is Baleka Mbete, and
how old is Zuma. I'm talking about the substance of the head.
Okay, but besides that, the ideas that you're talking about, that you're saying she's not bringing to the table, is the current deputy president having any new ideas that he's brought to the table?
He has none. So you see, and that's my contribution. I'm not a factionalist. I'm not supporting any of them.
Right.
Cyril Ramaphosa has no original idea. There's an allegation about his role in the constitutional this and the other, right? But the constitution is a collective product of people who negotiated. There is no idea that I know of that was ever propagated by Cyril Ramaphosa, which I think tells us, gives us a picture of a different South Africa that we have never had. Let me give you a practical example, because you might say I'm making up this thing. If we were to go to Mandela, we know that Mandela was passionate about reconciliation and nation building. He personally advocated that idea. We know it's associated with him. It's not an allegation. It's not an ANC idea. Go to Mbeki, African Renaissance, NEPAD, and all sorts of ideas. So these two people, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa, have no original ideas.
But here's the question. South Africa, at this stage in 2017, is that what we need? Somebody with a new idea, or do we need something else, Lebogang?
So I think I think the question is what the country needs, and I'll go back to that. I'm not sure that either of these particular names, notwithstanding the ANC Youth League's surprise in the hat that's going to emerge, are really the most appropriate names that we can think of. I think that both of them represent different forms of the same dogma. They also represent very narrow interests in different ways, in different dimensions, and I think that there's a problematic to that. They also don't represent a succession of ideology. They don't really represent a succession of nation building. They represent a continuation of some of the similar problematics.
But quickly, what does the country need right now?
Look, we need people who are snappy, quick, ethical. We need ethical, humane leadership. We need courage. We need people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, go back to basics, people who are willing to stand up to Western interests, and I mean in terms of making sure that our economy is real. Standing up to, for example, you know, some of the BRICS, who understands the complexities of the BRICS formation, that Russia, China, and India, even in Brazil to some extent, are not necessarily our buddies, but they're also budding neo-imperial powers who see us as junior partners. We need people who understand those complexities.
And is Baleka Mbete that person? That's one of the questions we're asking after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back at Interface on SABC, or at Tembisa Mashele is how you find us on social media. If you would like to get in touch and take part in this discussion as we talk about the succession debate in the ANC and looking at some of the candidates that have been put forth. And one of the questions before the break that we were asking is whether or not Baleka Mbete, who reportedly has put her hand up to say, actually, I'm also available for this position. Is she the kind of person that Lebogang was talking about earlier, that we need as a country?
No. Baleka Mbete, again, I don't know what she stands for. All the time she has projected herself as a disciplined ANC cadre who apes ANC positions. And that's the thing about the ANC, by the way. She has no original ideas, number one. Number two, I am not sure if she understands the world, how the world operates. Number three, no one can produce a shred of evidence that Baleka Mbete knows how the South African economy works. People are unemployed. We don't want people who want ceremony, right? We want people with ideas who can say, you know what, here are trends global in terms of modern economics. This is how we position South Africa, and this is how we're going to create new firms that are going to create jobs. Baleka Mbete is not that type of a person. She's, again, a tired old ANC furniture decorating the house.
You agree?
I think that basically I would frame it differently, but basically to say that her past track record doesn't seem to lend her the gravitas to manage the complexities, number one, of inter-party factionalism. I think her management of parliamentary processes in the last 12 to 18 months has left much to be desired, and it has actually to some extent contributed to a particular atmosphere of shutting down debate or being perceived as shielding the president, which is not the role of parliament. It's not the role of parliament to shield the president. It's the role of parliament for him to question the processes of the day as an elected officer, along with all the other, you know, whether it's the opposition, etc., etc. Right. And I think that if in that microcosm of a space she has not shown herself to be credible, it's not clear to me how she'll be much more credible on a national platform, having to mediate different opinions, different interests, inter-party interests, and then on the international stage yet again.
But as you and I were chatting off air, it's all good and well for us sitting on this side to talk about, what's needed, somebody that understands the economy, somebody that understands how the world works, as you were saying earlier. But isn't it about who resonates with the structures of the ANC? And if it is about that, who would you say does that currently?
You have put your finger on the money. The problem is not these individuals. The problem is their party. Their party is archaic, right? Is archaic, tired. Therefore, what it offers society is a tired product. So it means you need a revamp of the ANC.
But is it the ANC or is it the system, the political system, and how we elect?
No, but this system, by the way, is a wishy-washy thing in the sky. I'm talking about a concrete thing that is in Tula House called the ANC. Okay. Now, in the ANC, by the way, it's not as if the entire ANC is rotten. There are good people in the ANC. There are people I would say can actually lead a modern society. Take the Gauteng Premier, David Makhura, right? David Makhura is young, fresh ideas. You can, when you listen to him, you have a sense that the guy understands where South Africa is today and where it's supposed to go. There are a few fellows in the ANC who are like him, who can actually take the country into a better future. But those people are trapped by an old, tired party. That's the problem.
Now that links into what we're talking about off air, Tembi. So when I said that what the ANC, the problem is that the quagmire, a lot of the quagmire of the succession debate is linked to the quagmire that is now the ANC. This is not a rebranding exercise. It's not some exfoliation exercise. This is really going back, deconstructing in order to see something new emerge. And I think I spoke about the notion of what is the potential, what are the dangers and what are the potentialities of a vacuum where we say amongst this slate, none is suitable, and see whom will emerge, who and what will emerge as a result. But unfortunately, the party itself, the ANC as a movement, as a party, as an organization, because those are three different things, right, is in such a state of internal crisis and internal hemorrhage that it has really poisoned and poured its own toxins onto the people who are interested and capable. And as I said before, credible and eligible are not the same. So there are credible people, one or two names that Prince has mentioned, versus the eligible people such as Baleka, Zuma, etc., who perhaps are not as credible and don't resonate in the same way.
The ANC Youth League surprise candidate, the shock candidate that they're promising us, who do you think that's likely to be?
Well, I wish I had the powers of a Sangoma. I would throw my bones. I honestly have no idea who that is. But my sense is it will be someone who is sponsored by the Premier League, someone who is sponsored by the Guptas. I would be very shocked if this person doesn't come from those circles, because we know that the president of the Youth League is actually a deployee of the Guptas and the Premier League. So I suspect someone from those quotas.
Same?
I hope that they give us something fresh. I hope that they give us somebody who's perhaps, in terms of intergenerational succession planning, I have an idea of who it might be, but I'm not going to hazard that on national TV. But I'm not optimistic, because the character of the ANC Youth League at the moment has been part of fighting these proxy factional battles.
So are they still the kingmakers that they've been in the past?
Hardly.
No. So whoever this candidate is not guaranteed.
Not in the same way that they were 5 years ago. Certainly not.
At some point, they wanted to make a queen out of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, but they have backtracked on that. So maybe they will produce some king somewhere.
So much more for us to talk about, and we've run out of time. But we must continue to talk about this topic as it unfolds. Thank you so much to both of you for coming through to talk to us here on Interface. Pleasure. And that's all the time we have for tonight. To join us again next week at the same time. But remember, we do continue the conversation on social media. But join us there. Good night.